Training to master Egyptian writing. The path to becoming a scribe in ancient Egypt began in school, a place both demanding and sacred. From a young age, often around 5 to 7 years old, boys destined for this role were sent to House of Life schools attached to temples or government offices. Here, they faced a rigorous education focused on mastering the complex world of Egyptian writing. The curriculum was strict and challenging. Students learned to read and write hieroglyphs, the intricate picture-like symbols used mainly for religious and monumental inscriptions. Alongside these, they studied hieratic script, a simplified cursive form of writing used for everyday documents and correspondence. Memorizing hundreds of symbols was no small feat, and teachers expected absolute precision. Lessons started early each day with copying texts over and over to perfect handwriting and reinforce memorization. Mistakes were punished, sometimes harshly, because errors in official records could have serious consequences. Beyond writing, pupils learned arithmetic, geometry, and moral teachings, preparing them not only to record information, but also to understand its importance. Teachers were often experienced scribes themselves, respected figures who maintained discipline through strict oversight. The classroom was austere, typically a simple room with stone benches or mats where students practiced on wooden tablets coated with plaster or on ostraca, potsherds used as cheap writing surfaces. Despite the discipline and difficulty, becoming a scribe was a path to prestige. Literacy was rare, and scribes were crucial to every level of administration, from local tax offices to the royal palace. Success meant a stable career, social respect, and sometimes wealth. Many scribes would eventually serve in temples, government, or even the pharaoh's court. For those who persevered through years of study, the reward was not just a profession, but a lifelong role as a keeper of knowledge and tradition, a bridge between the ancient gods and the earthly realm. Tools of the scribe's trade. Every scribe depended on a specific set of tools essential for bringing words and symbols to life on papyrus. The primary writing instrument was the reed pen, carefully cut from the marsh plants growing along the Nile's banks. These pens had a pointed, split tip that allowed the scribe to control ink flow and create the delicate lines of hieroglyphs and hieratic script. Ink itself was made from natural ingredients. Black ink came from soot mixed with water and a binding agent, such as gum arabic. Red ink, used to highlight important words or beginnings of sections, was made from red ochre clay. The inks were kept in small ceramic palettes, often shared among scribes in the scriptorium. Papyrus was the favored writing surface in ancient Egypt. Made from the pith of the papyrus plant, it was cut into strips, soaked, pressed, and dried to form smooth sheets. These sheets could be glued together into scrolls, providing a flexible and portable medium. The production of papyrus was a skilled craft, largely controlled by the state or temple workshops. Scribes also used limestone flakes or broken pottery shards called ostraca for practice or informal notes. These were inexpensive and widely available, making them ideal for learning or rough drafts. The relationship between scribe and tools was intimate. Maintaining pens and preparing ink was part of the daily ritual, requiring patience and care. A well-made reed pen could last weeks, but needed sharpening and cleaning often. Papyrus scrolls were precious and had to be handled carefully to avoid tearing or smudging the ink. Together, These materials allowed scribes to produce the documents that shaped Egypt's administration, religion, and culture. From tax records to prayers, from legal decrees to stories of gods, ink on papyrus was the lifeblood of the ancient civilization, and the scribe's work was nothing without it. Work, rhythms, and duties of scribes. Inside the quiet walls of the scriptorium, the daily rhythm of a scribe's work unfolded with disciplined precision. These rooms, often within temples or administrative buildings, were hubs of activity where the written word governed the affairs of the kingdom. For the scribe, the day was a careful balance of copying, composing, and record-keeping. The morning began with reviewing previous work, checking for accuracy and completeness. Then came the steady task of copying texts, from official decrees and tax records to religious hymns and spells. Accuracy was paramount. Every symbol had to be perfect, for a single error could lead to misunderstandings with serious consequences. Many scribes specialized in certain types of documents. Some focused on temple records, keeping track of offerings and rituals, while others managed legal contracts or letters between officials. The work could be repetitive but demanded intense concentration and skill. The scriptorium was a place of quiet focus. Scribes sat at low desks or mats, tools arranged carefully to avoid spills or smudges. Mistakes were corrected with meticulous care, often by scraping the ink off papyrus or starting anew. The atmosphere was one of respect for the sacred power of writing. Breaks were brief and practical, food or water brought in from outside, and conversations were minimal, reserved for necessary instructions or clarifications. Despite the demanding workload, scribes took pride in their role as keepers of knowledge and servants of both gods and Pharaoh. As the sun moved across the sky, the scribe's work was never done. New documents arrived constantly, and deadlines for tax assessments or ritual preparations meant long hours. Yet this routine, steady and exacting, was the foundation on which the administration of Egypt rested, balancing religious and administrative duties. A scribe's work often bridged two powerful worlds, the divine realm of the temples and the practical realm of the state. Temples were not just places of worship, they were vast economic centers, managing land, resources, and labor. Scribes played a crucial role in both spheres, recording offerings to the gods as carefully as collecting taxes for the pharaoh. In the temple, scribes documented gifts and sacrifices made during rituals. Every grain of incense, every measure of grain, and every animal offered was noted meticulously. These records ensured that the gods were honored properly, and they justified the temple's wealth and privileges. At the same time, scribes were responsible for the kingdom's administration, especially tax collection. Egypt's economy depended on agriculture, and scribes kept detailed accounts of crops, livestock, and labor obligations. During the annual Nile flood, they measured fields and estimated yields to determine how much tax each farmer owed. This dual role required scribes to be skilled not only in writing but in mathematics and accounting. They had to balance complex calculations and produce reports for both temple priests and government officials. Errors could mean loss of revenue or divine displeasure. By serving both gods and Pharaoh, scribes embodied the connection between earthly power and divine order. Their records maintained the delicate balance that allowed Egypt to flourish for centuries. Two scripts, one scribe's skill. Ancient Egyptian scribes mastered not just one form of writing, but two distinct scripts, each with its own purpose and audience. Hieroglyphs, the elaborate and pictorial symbols, were used primarily for sacred texts, monuments, and official inscriptions. Hieratic, a cursive and simplified form, served everyday administrative and literary needs. Hieroglyphs were considered divine script, embodying the power of the gods. They adorned temple walls, tombs, and statues, often conveying religious stories and spells. Their complexity meant they were time-consuming to write and required careful artistry. Scribes trained extensively to perfect this script, which combined logograms, phonetic signs, and determinatives. In contrast, hieratic was faster and more practical. Written with reed pens on papyrus, hieratic allowed scribes to record letters, legal documents, tax records, and literature with greater efficiency. It was the script of the bureaucracy and daily life. A skilled scribe could switch fluidly between the two, depending on the task. Some texts began in hieratic and were later copied into hieroglyphs for monumental display. Others remained purely administrative, never intended for public or divine eyes. This dual mastery reflected the scribe's versatility and importance. They were both artists and clerks, bridging sacred tradition and practical governance through the written word. Influence within royal administration. Within the majestic court of the pharaoh, scribes held considerable power, though wielded quietly and often behind the scenes. As trusted literate officials, scribes were essential advisors and recorders of royal decrees, correspondence, and diplomatic messages. The pharaoh, revered as a god-king, depended on scribes to communicate his will throughout Egypt and beyond. Whether drafting treaties with foreign rulers or managing internal governance, scribes ensured every word reflected the divine authority of the throne. Many scribes served in the royal bureaucracy, working closely with high-ranking officials and priests. Their responsibilities included maintaining the royal archives, preparing census data, and recording legal judgments. The accuracy and discretion of these scribes were vital to the stability of the kingdom. Some scribes rose to great status, gaining wealth and influence as they managed sensitive information and negotiated power dynamics at court. Yet their role demanded loyalty and absolute secrecy. Errors or leaks could lead to severe punishment. Through ink and papyrus, scribes shaped the pharaoh's legacy and the history of Egypt itself, proving that true power could come not from sword or throne, but from the written word. Tracking Egypt's lifeblood. In the fertile lands along the Nile, the relationship between scribes and farmers was crucial for the kingdom's survival. The annual harvest determined the wealth of Egypt, and scribes played a vital role in documenting these yields to ensure fair taxation and resource distribution. Each year, after the floodwaters receded, scribes traveled to villages and fields to measure the land and estimate crop output. Using simple tools and calculations, they recorded the size of farms and the types of crops planted, often accompanied by local farmers who guided their assessments. These records formed the basis for tax collection, a complex system that demanded accuracy and fairness. Scribes tallied grain stores, livestock numbers, and labor contributions, then submitted detailed reports to provincial and royal administrators. Farmers depended on scribes not only to collect taxes, but also to keep official records that could protect them from unfair claims or disputes. The relationship was therefore one of both authority and trust. Through their diligent recording, scribes ensured that Egypt's agricultural economy remained stable, feeding both the people and the powerful elite. Without their careful work, the lifeblood of the kingdom, the harvest, could neither be counted nor controlled. Crafting texts to secure eternal life. One of the most mysterious and sacred tasks of the ancient Egyptian scribe was writing texts for the afterlife. The tombs of pharaohs, nobles, and priests were filled with inscriptions intended to guide and protect the deceased on their journey beyond death. Scribes copied sacred spells, prayers, and rituals from the Book of the Dead and other funerary texts onto tomb walls, coffins, and papyrus scrolls placed in burial chambers. These writings were believed to possess magical power, helping the departed navigate the underworld and achieve eternal life. The precision of these inscriptions was crucial. A single mistake could imperil the soul's safe passage. This gave scribes' work an intense spiritual significance beyond the administrative duties of daily life. Often working alongside artists and priests, scribes played a role in preserving religious knowledge and ensuring continuity of belief across generations. Their writings immortalized not only the deceased, but the very essence of Egyptian spirituality. By inscribing these sacred secrets, scribes became guardians of life beyond death, weaving their craft into the eternal tapestry of Egypt's culture. The rare but real presence of women scribes. While the vast majority of scribes in ancient Egypt were men, evidence shows that some women also mastered the art of writing. These female scribes were rare but played important roles, especially in temple contexts and certain administrative positions. Women who became scribes were usually from elite families, receiving education comparable to their male counterparts. They often worked as accountants, secretaries, or ritual recorders within temples, helping to maintain sacred and economic records. However, societal norms limited women's participation in many aspects of scribal life. Public administrative roles, especially at higher levels, were predominantly male domains. Women scribes were more often attached to religious institutions or household management. Despite these limitations, inscriptions and papyri attest to women who held scribal titles, demonstrating their respected, if exceptional, place within the profession. Their presence challenges modern assumptions about gender roles in ancient Egypt. Female scribes highlight the complex social dynamics of literacy and power, showing that writing was not solely a male preserve, but a skill that could cross gender boundaries under certain circumstances. The serious consequences of mistakes. In ancient Egypt, the role of a scribe came with immense responsibility and sometimes grave risk. Writing was more than a technical skill. It was a sacred act tied closely to religion and governance. A single error in a legal document, tax record, or religious text could lead to serious repercussions. Mistakes might cause financial loss, legal disputes, or even anger the gods. Because of this, scribes were expected to maintain flawless accuracy. If they made errors, they could face harsh punishments ranging from reprimands to physical penalties. In some extreme cases, errors in tomb inscriptions or funerary texts were believed to endanger the deceased's afterlife. a failure considered deeply shameful and spiritually dangerous. This pressure to be perfect shaped the scribe's careful, disciplined work ethic. Tools were maintained meticulously, texts copied repeatedly, and corrections made with great care. The fear of error was a constant presence, but it also underscored the high status of scribes. Their writings truly held the power to shape lives, fortunes, and the divine order. Guardians of religious tradition. Beyond bureaucracy and administration, scribes were vital custodians of Egypt's sacred knowledge. They copied and preserved myths, religious texts, magical spells, and ritual instructions that shaped Egyptian spirituality and cultural identity. Temples depended on scribes to produce accurate copies of texts like the Book of the Dead, pyramid texts, and coffin texts, which guided the living and the dead. These writings contained complex theology, prayers, and incantations believed to invoke divine protection and power. Scribes also recorded rituals performed by priests, ensuring the continuity of ceremonies that maintained cosmic order and the favor of the gods. Their work preserved oral traditions in written form, allowing religious knowledge to transcend generations. This sacred responsibility elevated the scribe's role beyond mere clerk or accountant to that of a spiritual guardian. Through their painstaking efforts, the stories and beliefs of ancient Egypt endured for millennia. Rest, family, and contemplation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of another demanding day, the scribe returned home to the quieter rhythms of evening. After hours of focused writing and meticulous record-keeping, evenings offered a chance to rest, reflect, and reconnect with family. Meals were simple but nourishing: bread, vegetables, fish, and occasionally meat, often shared with relatives in a modest household. The scribe might recount the day's work or discuss news from the temple or government offices. Despite their respected status, scribes lived lives balanced between duty and domesticity. Evenings also provided time for personal study or preparation for the next day's tasks. Some scribes used this quiet to copy literary or religious texts for their own enrichment, deepening their knowledge and spiritual connection. The mind of a scribe was always engaged, thinking through the complexities of texts, laws, and rituals. Yet moments of leisure, music, storytelling, or simple conversation offered vital relief from the discipline required by their profession. Through these daily routines, the scribe maintained not only the administrative machinery of Egypt, but also a steady connection to family and culture, grounding their work in the human experience. Their writings outlast lifetimes. Scribes left a legacy carved not just in papyrus, but in stone. Monumental inscriptions on temples, tombs, and statues immortalize their words, preserving history, laws, and religious teachings for eternity. These stone records were carefully composed by scribes to ensure the memory of kings, nobles, and gods endured beyond mortal life. Hieroglyphs etched into limestone or granite spoke across millennia, telling stories of victories, divine favor, and cultural values. By crafting such enduring messages, scribes became eternal witnesses to Egypt's grandeur. Their work transcended their own lives, linking past, present, and future. Inscriptions on public monuments also reinforced social order and religious belief, reminding all who saw them of the power of the pharaoh and the gods. The scribe's skill thus contributed not only to administration, but to the very identity of ancient Egypt. Through stone and ink, scribes ensured that the civilization's greatest achievements would never be forgotten. Reflecting on the scribe's enduring role, as we look back across thousands of years, the figure of the ancient Egyptian scribe emerges as a timeless symbol of memory and history. With reed pens and ink, they captured the world around them, its laws, beliefs, stories, and everyday life, preserving it for generations far beyond their own. Their work reminds us that writing is more than a skill. It is a sacred act of connection, linking past and future, mortal and divine. Through their careful craft, scribes made history tangible and memory enduring. In a civilization defined by permanence, the scribe's ink was the lifeblood of continuity. Their dedication to precision, knowledge, and spiritual truth offers a profound meditation on the power of words. Even today, as we decode their texts and marvel at their artistry, we participate in the legacy they created, an unbroken chain of human thought stretching across time. The scribe's life in ancient Egypt was a testament to the enduring power of writing to shape culture, identity, and the very essence of civilization.